Introduction. The invisible force. The world's most attractive people, the ones everyone wants to be near, aren't more beautiful, richer, or even more confident than you. They simply know something you don't. And for the next few hours, I'm going to show you exactly what that is. Let me tell you about two people I met at the same conference 3 years ago. The first was Marcus. He had everything you'd expect from someone successful. Designer suit, firm handshake, impressive business cards. He talked about his achievements, asked the right networking questions, and maintained strong eye contact. By conventional standards, he was doing everything right. The second was Elena. She wore a simple dress, spoke softly, and spent most of the evening listening rather than talking. She didn't hand out business cards. She didn't dominate conversations. Yet by the end of the night, there was literally a small crowd around her, and I watched person after person try to extend their time in her presence. What was the difference? Marcus was performing attraction. Eleanor was embodying it. This distinction between performing and embodying is the foundation of everything you're about to learn. And here's the truth that might sting a little. If you're trying hard to be attractive, interesting, or charismatic, you're already losing. The most magnetically attractive people in the world, the ones who seem to effortlessly draw others in, have discovered something that contradicts everything we've been taught about social success. They've learned that attraction isn't about addition. It's about subtraction. It's not about what you add to your personality, your appearance, or your behavior. It's about what you remove: the masks, the try-hard energy, the performance anxiety, the need to impress. When you strip away these layers of social conditioning, what remains is something far more powerful than any technique or tactic: authentic presence. But here's where it gets interesting. Authentic presence isn't some mystical, unattainable quality. It's a learnable skill built on specific psychological principles and behavioral patterns. Throughout this audiobook, I'm going to show you exactly how these patterns work, why they work, and how to integrate them into your life so naturally that people won't be able to explain why they feel drawn to you. They'll just know they are. We're going to explore the counterintuitive psychology of attraction. You'll discover why the desperate pursuit of being liked actually repels people. You'll learn why silence is often more seductive than clever words. You'll understand how your nervous system communicates volumes before you ever open your mouth. And you'll master the subtle shifts in body language, energy, and presence that transform you from forgettable to magnetic. This isn't about manipulation, it's about liberation. From the exhausting performance of trying to be someone you're not, from the anxiety of wondering if people like you, from the frustration of being overlooked despite your best efforts. By the time you finish this audiobook, you'll understand the invisible rules that govern human attraction. You'll see social dynamics that were always there but previously invisible to you. And most importantly, you'll have a practical roadmap for becoming the kind of person others naturally want to be around. The journey begins with understanding a simple but profound truth. People aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to presence. And presence is something you already have. You've just forgotten how to access it. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Attraction Paradox. There's a phenomenon in psychology called the paradox of pursuit. The harder you chase something, the more it eludes you. Try to fall asleep and you'll lie awake for hours. Try desperately to remember a name and it vanishes from your mind. Try too hard to be funny and your jokes fall flat. Attraction operates on this same paradox. The more you need people to like you, the less they will. The more you perform for attention, the less magnetic you become. This isn't cruel. It's simply how human psychology works. Let me explain why. When you're operating from a place of need, needing validation, needing approval, needing to be seen as attractive or interesting, you emit a specific kind of energy. Your body language becomes slightly more tense. Your eye contact becomes either too intense or too avoidant. Your voice takes on a barely perceptible quality of anxiety. Your movements become just a fraction too deliberate or too jerky. None of these changes are obvious or conscious. But human beings have spent hundreds of thousands of years evolving highly sophisticated threat detection systems. We're exceptionally good at sensing when someone wants something from us. Even when we can't articulate what we're sensing, this is where the paradox lives. The very act of wanting to be attractive creates subtle signals of neediness, and neediness is the antithesis of attraction. Think about the people you find most attractive, not physically, but energetically, the ones you want to be around. I'd bet they share a common quality. They seem complete without you. They're genuinely happy to see you, but they don't need you to validate their worth. They exist fully, whether you're paying attention to them or not. This quality, self-sufficiency without aloofness, contentment without complacency, is magnetic because it's rare. Most people are walking around with an invisible sign that says, "Please like me. Please validate me. Please see me as valuable." The attractive person's invisible sign says something entirely different. "I'm okay exactly as I am. Your approval is a bonus, not a necessity." The science of secure attachment. Psychologists have identified this quality through attachment theory. People with secure attachment, roughly 50% of the population, have an internalized sense of worthiness that doesn't fluctuate based on external validation. They can be vulnerable without being needy. They can be confident without being arrogant. They exist in a psychological sweet spot that others find incredibly attractive. Here's the good news. Even if you didn't develop secure attachment in childhood, you can cultivate these qualities as an adult. The behavioral patterns of secure attachment can be learned, practiced, and embodied until they become automatic. Research from the University of Kansas found that people who displayed secure attachment behaviors, warmth without clinginess, interest without interrogation, presence without performance, were rated as significantly more attractive by strangers, even in brief interactions lasting less than 5 minutes. The researchers identified several key behaviors that signaled secure attachment. Comfortable with silence. Asked questions out of genuine curiosity rather than social obligation. Maintained relaxed, open body language. Could disagree without becoming defensive. Showed appropriate self-disclosure without oversharing. Responded to others without trying to top their stories. Notice what's absent from this list. Impressive achievements, witty remarks, or strategic social tactics. The most attractive behaviors are remarkably simple. They're just difficult to execute when you're operating from a place of neediness. Breaking free from the performance trap. Most of us have been unconsciously trained to perform. We learned early that certain behaviors earned approval. Being smart, being funny, being helpful, being agreeable. Over time, these behaviors calcified into masks we wear in social situations. The problem is that masks are exhausting. They require constant maintenance. You have to remember which version of yourself you're presenting. You have to monitor whether people are responding the way you want. You have to adjust your performance in real time based on feedback. Meanwhile, the person who's dropped the mask is present, relaxed, and authentic. They have all their mental energy available for genuine connection instead of impression management. Who do you think is more attractive? I learnt this lesson the hard way at a dinner party several years ago. I was seated next to someone I desperately wanted to impress, a potential mentor in my field. I spent the entire first course performing, sharing my accomplishments, asking strategic questions, demonstrating my knowledge. Then something interesting happened. I knocked over my water glass, and in the scramble to clean it up, I completely dropped the performance. I laughed at myself, made a self-deprecating joke, and for just a moment I was simply present with the situation rather than managing an impression. That's when the conversation actually began. My dinner companion relaxed, started sharing more personally, and by the end of the evening, we'd formed a genuine connection. The irony. He later told me he was most impressed by how I handled the water glass incident, my authenticity in that unguarded moment. Practical strategy, the 70% rule. Here's your first practical tool, the 70% rule. In any social interaction, aim to operate at 70% of your capacity to impress, not 100% where you're performing and exhausting yourself, not 30% where you're checked out and unavailable. Right around 70%, engaged but relaxed, present but not performing. This creates psychological space for genuine interaction. When you're not maxing out your social effort, you have room to actually listen, to respond authentically, to be surprised by where the conversation goes. You become a participant in the moment rather than the director of it. Try this exercise this week. In your next social interaction, consciously dial back your effort to impress by about 30%. Notice what happens. Most people find that the conversation actually improves. There's more laughter, more spontaneity, more real connection. Why? Because attraction isn't about impressing people. It's about making them feel comfortable enough to be themselves around you. And people can only relax around someone who's relaxed themselves. The energetic shift. Here's what I want you to understand at a deep level. Neediness and attractiveness exist on opposite ends of a spectrum. You cannot be both simultaneously. The moment you need someone's approval, you've undermined your attractiveness to them. This doesn't mean you can't want connection, enjoy attention, or appreciate compliments. Those are healthy desires. Neediness is different. Neediness is when your sense of self-worth is held hostage by another person's response to you. The shift from neediness to attractiveness happens in your nervous system before it shows up in your behavior. It's a felt sense of, I'm okay either way. Either this person likes me or they don't. I'm okay either way. Either this conversation goes well or it doesn't. I'm okay either way. Either I get invited back or I don't. I'm okay either way. This isn't indifference. It's freedom. And freedom is incredibly attractive. In the next chapter, we'll explore exactly how to cultivate this okay either way mindset and the specific behavioral patterns that flow from it. But first, I want you to start noticing the paradox at work in your own life. Pay attention this week to the people you find most attractive. Notice their energy. Observe how they handle rejection or disinterest. Watch how they navigate social situations. I'd bet you'll see the paradox in action. The people who need your attention least are often the ones you most want to give it to. Chapter 2. The Power of Grounded Presence. Imagine two people entering a room. The first scans the environment immediately. Who's here? Who's important? Where should they position themselves? Their eyes dart from person to person. Their body language is slightly forward, eager, ready to engage. They move quickly, filling the space with energy. The second person enters differently. They pause for just a moment at the threshold. Their gaze is calm, taking in the room without urgency. They move with deliberate, unhurried steps. When they make eye contact, it's full and present before moving on. There's a quality of settledness to their presence. Which person draws your attention? If you're like most people, it's the second person. But why? They're doing less. They're certainly not performing or trying to be noticed. Yet something about their energy is magnetic. What you're witnessing is the power of grounded presence, the foundation of silent seduction. Understanding grounded presence. Grounded presence is a state of being fully in your body, connected to the present moment, and rooted in a sense of internal stability. It's the opposite of the anxious, scattered, performing energy that characterizes most social interaction. Neuroscientists have discovered that humans have mirror neurons, brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that action. This neural mirroring is the basis of empathy, but it also means that we literally feel each other's nervous system states. When you're anxious, the people around you unconsciously register that anxiety. When you're grounded, they feel that too. This is why someone can walk into a room and change the entire atmosphere without saying a word. They're broadcasting their nervous system state, and everyone's mirror neurons are picking it up. Grounded presence creates a sense of safety in others. At a primal level, it signals, this person is not a threat. This person is stable. This person is safe to be around. And safety is the prerequisite for attraction. Think about it. You can't be attracted to someone who makes you feel anxious or unsafe. You might be impressed by them, intimidated by them, or interested in them. But genuine attraction requires a baseline of safety. This is why grounded presence is so powerful. It creates the neurological conditions for attraction to flourish. The physiology of presence. Grounded presence isn't just psychological, it's deeply physical. It shows up in specific, measurable ways. Breathing. Grounded people breathe slowly and deeply, primarily from their diaphragm rather than their chest. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which signals safety and calm to both your own brain and the brains of people around you. Posture. Grounded presence involves a specific postural alignment. Spine long but not rigid, shoulders relaxed, weight distributed evenly. It's the opposite of both the collapsed posture of insecurity and the puffed-up posture of compensation. Movement quality. Grounded people move more slowly and deliberately. Their gestures are economical rather than excessive. There's a quality of intention behind each movement. Voice. Grounded presence creates a lower, fuller vocal tone. The voice resonates from the chest rather than the throat. Speech pace is moderate, with comfortable pauses. Eye contact. Perhaps most noticeably, grounded people make eye contact that's full and present without being intense or aggressive. Their gaze is steady but soft. All of these physical qualities communicate one meta-message. I am here, I am present, I am not going anywhere. This is incredibly attractive because most people are mentally somewhere else, in the past, in the future, in their anxious thoughts, even when they're physically present. Practical exercise, the 3-point ground. Here's a foundational practice for developing grounded presence that you can use before any social interaction. Find a moment of privacy, in your car, in a bathroom, even just stepping outside for a moment. Stand with your feet hip-width apart and bring your awareness to 3 points of contact. 1. Your feet on the ground. Really feel the pressure, the texture, the temperature. Imagine roots growing from your feet down into the earth. Take 3 deep breaths while maintaining this awareness. 2. Your seat bones, if sitting, or pelvis, if standing. Feel the weight of your torso settling into your lower body. Imagine your skeleton being held by gravity rather than by muscular tension. Take 3 more deep breaths. 3. The space around you. Expand your awareness to include the room or environment. Notice sounds, temperature, light. Let your peripheral vision soften and widen. 3 more breaths. This entire process takes less than a minute, but it dramatically shifts your nervous system from activation to settledness. Do this before entering any social situation, and you'll immediately project a different quality of presence. The Calm Center exercise. Another powerful practice is what I call the Calm Center visualization. Close your eyes and imagine a point of absolute stillness at your core, right behind your navel, deep in your center. Visualize this as a sphere of calm, golden light. Now imagine that no matter what happens around you, noise, movement, demands, chaos, this calm center remains undisturbed. It's like the eye of a hurricane. Everything can swirl around it, but it remains perfectly still. Practice accessing this felt sense of a calm center throughout your day. In the middle of a stressful meeting, find the calm center. In the midst of a difficult conversation, return to the calm center. In a loud, chaotic social environment, anchor yourself in the calm center. Over time, this becomes automatic. You develop an internal reference point of stability that doesn't fluctuate based on external circumstances. And this internal stability is exactly what other people perceive as groundedness. Real-world application. The cocktail party. Let me give you a concrete example of how grounded presence changes social dynamics. Sarah attended a networking event feeling anxious and out of place. Her default strategy was to move quickly from conversation to conversation, trying to meet as many people as possible, performing enthusiasm and interest. After learning about grounded presence, she tried a different approach at the next event. She arrived, found a spot, and took 3 minutes to do the 3-point ground exercise in a quiet corner. Then she entered the main room, and instead of immediately seeking conversation, she simply stood and took in the environment for 30 seconds. The difference was immediate. Within a minute, someone approached her. Then another person. Soon she was engaged in a deep, interesting conversation with several people, not because she was performing or trying, but because her grounded presence created a natural point of attraction. As she described it later, "I felt like I went from pushing the river to being a rock the river flows around. People naturally moved toward me instead of me having to chase them down." This is the power of grounded presence. It transforms you from someone seeking attention to someone naturally receiving it. The paradox of effort. Here's another paradox. The less effort you expend trying to be attractive, the more attractive you become. Grounded presence requires effort to cultivate, but looks effortless in execution. This is different from laziness or disengagement. Grounded presence is active, but it's not performing. It's the difference between a yoga pose, where you're straining and shaking, versus one where you've found the precise alignment that allows you to hold it with ease. In social situations, this means you're fully present and engaged, but you're not working to manage impressions. You're participating, but you're not controlling. You're available, but you're not needy. Common obstacles to grounded presence. Most people struggle with grounded presence for a few common reasons. Anxiety about silence. We've been trained to fill every gap in conversation, to keep things moving, to entertain. Grounded presence requires being comfortable with stillness and silence. Fear of being boring. If we're not performing, won't people lose interest? This fear actually creates the boring, performative energy we're trying to avoid. Addiction to validation. The little hits of dopamine we get from making people laugh, impressing them, or receiving compliments are addictive. Grounded presence means being willing to go without these hits. Misunderstanding confidence. Many people think confidence means projecting energy outward. Real confidence is actually drawing energy inward, being so full in yourself that you don't need to broadcast. The antidote to all of these obstacles is the same: practice. The more you practice grounded presence, the more you realize that it actually makes interactions better, not worse. People are more engaged, conversations go deeper, and connections feel more real. Your challenge. This week, here's what I want you to practice. In your next 3 social interactions, focus solely on grounded presence. Don't try to be interesting, funny, or impressive. Just focus on being present. Do the 3-point ground exercise beforehand. Then enter the interaction with a single intention. Stay connected to your body and the present moment. When you notice yourself starting to perform or manage impressions, gently return to your breath and your feet on the ground. Notice what happens. You might be surprised to find that the conversation flows more easily. People seem more relaxed around you, and you leave feeling energized rather than drained. Grounded presence is the foundation everything else builds on. Master this, and you've mastered the most important element of silent seduction. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to combine grounded presence with strategic silence, the art of becoming magnetically attractive by saying less, not more. Chapter 3: The Strategic Power of Silence. We live in a world that worships words. We're taught from childhood that articulate, talkative people are successful. That silence is awkward. That good conversationalists fill every gap with clever remarks. We've been trained to equate verbal output with value. This is precisely backwards. The most magnetic people I've ever met share a counterintuitive quality. They're comfortable with silence. Not awkward, fidgety silence, but purposeful, grounded silence that creates space for real connection. Let me tell you about a conversation that changed how I understood social dynamics forever. I was at a small dinner party, seated across from a woman named Dr. Chen, a renowned psychologist. Throughout the evening, I noticed something unusual. While others jumped in with advice, anecdotes, and opinions, Dr. Chen said relatively little. But when she did speak, the entire table went quiet to listen. More striking was what happened during the silences. After someone finished speaking, instead of immediately responding, Dr. Chen would pause, sometimes for 3, 4, even 5 seconds, before replying. In those pauses, something magical happened. The speaker would often add something more, something deeper, something more honest than their initial statement. By the end of the evening, I realized that Dr. Chen had spoken maybe a third as much as anyone else at the table, yet everyone left feeling like they'd had the most meaningful conversation with her. She'd said less, but connected more. This is the power of strategic silence. Why silence is magnetic. Silence creates several powerful psychological effects. It signals confidence. People who are comfortable with silence are comfortable with themselves. They don't need to fill every moment with words to prove their value. This self-assurance is inherently attractive. It invites depth. When you pause, instead of immediately responding, you give the other person permission to go deeper. Many people will use that silence to share what they really meant to say, the thought beneath the thought. It demonstrates listening. In a world where most people are just waiting for their turn to talk, someone who actually listens, who takes a moment to absorb what was said before responding, stands out dramatically. It builds anticipation. Strategic pauses before you speak create a micro moment of tension and release. People lean in slightly, unconsciously preparing to receive what you're about to say. It filters your communication. The pause gives you a moment to choose your words rather than simply reacting. This means what you do say tends to be more thoughtful, more genuine, more impactful. Research from the University of Groningen found that speakers who incorporated deliberate pauses were rated as more intelligent, more trustworthy, and more charismatic than those who spoke continuously, even when the content of what they said was identical. The 3 types of strategic silence. Not all silences are created equal. There are 3 distinct types of strategic silence, each serving a different purpose. 1. The listening silence. This is the silence that says, "I'm fully present with what you just said." It occurs after someone finishes speaking before you respond. This pause, ideally 2 to 4 seconds, accomplishes several things. It shows you're actually processing what was said rather than formulating your response while they talked. It creates space for them to add more if they want to. It slows down the interaction, creating depth rather than breadth. It activates their mirror neurons, making them feel genuinely heard. Practice this religiously. After someone speaks, count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi in your head before responding. It will feel eternal at first. You'll be convinced the other person thinks you're slow or disinterested, but watch their body language. They'll actually lean in slightly, their eyes will soften, and they'll often add more detail to what they just said. 2. The reflective silence. This is the silence that says, "I'm thinking about what you said." It occurs in the middle of your response as a thoughtful pause while you choose your next words. It might sound like, "That's interesting." Pause. I think the challenge there is, "I hear what you're saying." Pause. And it makes me wonder. Pause. I've never thought about it that way. These mid-sentence pauses create the impression that you're thinking in real time, that your responses are genuine rather than rehearsed. It makes the conversation feel alive and authentic. 3. The comfortable silence. This is perhaps the most advanced form, the ability to simply be with another person without needing to fill the space with words. It occurs in longer stretches, particularly during transitions or natural lulls. Most people panic at these moments and rush to fill the void with small talk. But comfortable silence says, "I'm so secure in myself and in this interaction that I don't need constant verbal validation that this is going well." The ability to sustain comfortable silence is a litmus test for deep connection. People who can't tolerate silence together aren't truly comfortable with each other. People who can exist in easy silence have transcended the performing stage of relationship and entered genuine connection. The oversharing epidemic. Here's a social phenomenon you've probably noticed. People oversharing, dominating conversations and seeming unable to stop talking even when it's clearly not serving them. Why does this happen? It's usually anxiety masquerading as enthusiasm. The person is uncomfortable with silence, uncertain of their value, and unconsciously believes that more words equal more worth. So they fill every gap, elaborate every point, and turn simple exchanges into monologues. The irony is that this strategy backfires. The more you talk, the less people listen. The more you overshare, the less people want to know. The less comfortable you are with silence, the less comfortable people are with you. Compare this to someone who speaks economically. When they talk, it matters. People listen because they've learned that this person doesn't waste words. Their silence has made their speech valuable. The 50-50 principle. Here's a practical guideline. In any one-on-one conversation, aim for a 50-50 balance of speaking and listening. In group conversations, speak proportionally to the number of people, if there are 5 people. Aim for about 20% of the airtime. Most people who think they're following this rule are actually speaking 70 to 80% of the time. Our perception of our own verbal dominance is notoriously inaccurate. Try this experiment. Record a conversation with permission, or have a trusted friend observe you. Calculate the actual percentage of time you're speaking versus listening. Most people are shocked by the reality. Once you know your baseline, you can consciously adjust. Practical techniques for strategic silence. Here are specific tactics you can implement immediately. The 3-second rule. After anyone finishes speaking, count to 3 before responding. This becomes automatic with practice and transforms the quality of your conversations. The follow-up question. Instead of sharing your own similar experience after someone tells a story, ask a follow-up question that goes deeper into their experience. Then pause and listen to their answer. The minimal response. When someone is clearly just thinking out loud or processing, resist the urge to jump in with solutions or parallel stories. Instead, use minimal encouragers. I see. Tell me more. These tiny phrases keep you present without hijacking the conversation. The editing practice. Before speaking, ask yourself, is what I'm about to say necessary, true, and kind? If all 3 answers are yes, speak. If not, stay silent. This practice alone will cut your verbal output in half while doubling your impact. The silence meditation. Practice being comfortable with silence by sitting quietly with another person for 5 minutes without talking. This feels impossibly awkward at first, but becomes surprisingly comfortable. It builds your silence tolerance like a muscle. Real-world application. The interview. James, a client of mine, was preparing for a major job interview. His tendency was to fill every silence with additional information about his qualifications, often to the point of rambling. We worked on strategic silence together. During the actual interview, when asked about his biggest weakness, James gave a concise, honest answer, and then stopped talking. The silence stretched for perhaps 4 seconds. The interviewer nodded thoughtfully and then moved to the next question. Later, the hiring manager told James that his ability to answer questions directly without over-explaining suggested confidence and self-awareness, exactly the qualities they were looking for. James got the job, in part because of what he didn't say. The power dynamic shift. Here's something fascinating about silence. It changes power dynamics. In most interactions, the person who's least comfortable with silence is the one who fills it, and by filling it, they unconsciously cede power to the person who's comfortable staying silent. Skilled negotiators know this. Therapists know this. Great leaders know this. After making a key point or asking an important question, they stay silent. The silence creates pressure, and the other person often reveals more than they intended or agrees to things they hadn't planned to. I'm not suggesting you manipulate people, but I am pointing out that your comfort with silence is a form of social power. It demonstrates that you're not anxious about the other person's response. You're not desperately seeking approval, and you're not afraid of what might emerge in the space between words. When not to use silence. Strategic silence is powerful, but like any tool, it can be misused. Here are situations where more speech, not less, is appropriate. When someone clearly needs reassurance or comfort. When enthusiasm and energy are what the moment calls for. When you need to advocate for yourself or others. When clarification is genuinely needed. When someone is in distress and needs to hear a human voice. The key is intentionality. Whether you're speaking or silent, do it by choice rather than by habit or anxiety. Conscious communication, whether verbal or non-verbal, is always more effective than reactive communication. Your practice for this week. Here's your challenge. Practice the 3-second pause after every single thing someone says to you this week. I don't care if it's your best friend, your barista, or your boss. Count to 3 before responding. Also, try this. In your next social interaction, set a private goal to speak 25% less than you normally would. Fill that space with attentive listening and minimal encouragers. Notice what happens to the quality of the conversation and how people respond to you. Finally, find a trusted friend or partner and try the 5-minute silence exercise. Sit together without talking, just being present. It will be uncomfortable at first, but it will build your capacity for comfortable silence like nothing else. Remember, silence isn't empty. It's full of possibility, pregnant with presence, and often more eloquent than any words you could speak. Master strategic silence, and you've mastered one of the most powerful tools of silent seduction. In the next chapter, we'll explore the subtle art of body language, how to communicate attraction, confidence, and charisma without saying a word. Chapter 4. The language your body speaks. While you've been worrying about what to say, your body has already had the entire conversation. Research by Albert Mehrabian famously suggested that in communication of feelings and attitudes, words account for only 7% of the message, tone of voice for 38%, and body language for 55%. While these exact percentages have been debated, the underlying truth remains: the vast majority of what we communicate happens non-verbally. Your body is constantly broadcasting signals about your internal state. Confidence or anxiety, interest or boredom, openness or defensiveness, security or neediness. And other people are reading these signals, usually unconsciously, and forming impressions of you before you've spoken a word. This is simultaneously terrifying and empowering. Terrifying because you might be unconsciously sabotaging yourself with poor body language. Empowering because once you understand these signals, you can consciously cultivate body language that amplifies your attractiveness. The foundation: open versus closed body language. All body language exists on a spectrum from open to closed. Understanding this spectrum is fundamental to everything else. Closed body language creates a physical barrier between you and others. It includes crossed arms or legs, hunched shoulders, body turned away from the person you're with, minimal gestures, keeping hands close to body, downward gaze, contracted posture, making yourself small, closed body language, signals defensiveness, discomfort, or disinterest. It's a protective posture that says, I'm not available for connection right now. Open body language removes barriers and invites connection. It includes uncrossed limbs, relaxed shoulders, chest slightly lifted, body oriented toward the person you're with, natural gestures that extend from the body, accessible eye contact, expanded posture, comfortably taking up space. Open body language signals confidence, receptivity, and interest. It says, I'm available, I'm engaged, and I'm not threatened by this interaction. Here's the catch. You can't just mechanically adopt open body language while feeling anxious or defensive. Your body will leak the truth. Genuine open body language flows from internal openness, from the grounded presence we discussed earlier. This is why all these elements work together. You can't fake confident body language any more than you can fake genuine charisma. You have to develop the internal state first, then the external expression follows naturally. The eyes, your most powerful non-verbal tool. Let's talk about eye contact, because this is where most people get it dramatically wrong. There's a common belief that good eye contact means staring intensely at someone while they talk, barely blinking, demonstrating focus. This is actually terrible eye contact. It's predatory, aggressive, and makes people deeply uncomfortable. Great eye contact is softer. Here's the secret. Focus on the entire face, not just the eyes. Let your gaze include their eyes, but also wander naturally to their whole face as they speak. This creates a sense of full attention without the intensity that makes people want to look away. Additionally, great eye contact includes strategic breaks. When you're thinking about what someone said, it's natural to look away briefly, up and to the side, or down slightly. This signals genuine processing. Then, when you look back and respond, your eye contact feels intentional and meaningful. Here's a fascinating research finding. People who made eye contact for 7 to 10 seconds at a time with natural breaks were rated as most trustworthy and charismatic. Those who maintained constant eye contact without breaking were rated as domineering and unsettling. Those who barely made eye contact were rated as anxious or untrustworthy. The sweet spot is engaged but natural eye contact, present but not intense, consistent but not constant. The practice of soft eyes. There's a meditation practice called soft eyes that translates beautifully to social situations. Instead of focusing your eyes in a hard, pointed way, like reading small text, relax your eye muscles and allow your peripheral vision to expand. When you do this, your face automatically softens. The tiny muscles around your eyes relax. Your gaze becomes more receptive and less intense. People unconsciously read this as warmth and safety. Try it right now. Focus hard on something. Notice how your face tightens. Now soften your gaze. Expand your peripheral awareness. Notice how your whole face relaxes. This is the quality you want to bring to eye contact. Posture, the silent status signal. Your posture communicates volumes about your social status and self-perception. But again, the goal isn't to puff yourself up artificially, it's to find natural, grounded alignment. Think of your spine as a string pulling gently upward from the crown of your head. Your shoulders relax and drop slightly. Your chest opens naturally without forcing it. Your pelvis is neutral, not tucked or thrust forward. Your weight is evenly distributed on both feet if standing, or equally on both sit bones if seated. This aligned posture accomplishes several things. It facilitates breathing. Good posture allows for full, deep breaths, which keeps your nervous system calm and your voice resonant. It projects confidence. Upright posture is universally associated with confidence and social status across cultures. It reduces anxiety. There's a bidirectional relationship between posture and mood. Stand slumped and you'll feel more anxious. Stand aligned and you'll feel more capable. It creates presence. Good posture makes you more visible and present in a space. People are more likely to notice you and remember you. The speed of your movements. Here's something most people never consciously notice but unconsciously register: the speed and quality of movement. Anxious people move quickly and jerkily. Their gestures are fast and somewhat uncontrolled. They fidget, touching their face, adjusting their clothes, shifting their weight constantly. This broadcasts nervous energy and makes others unconsciously anxious. Confident people move more slowly and deliberately. Their gestures are economical and purposeful. They can be still without fidgeting. This broadcasts calm and makes others feel relaxed. Watch powerful people, CEOs, actors, politicians who command attention. Notice how they move. There's a quality of unhurried deliberateness to their gestures. They're never rushed, never jerky, never excessive. You can cultivate this quality through awareness. For the next week, consciously slow down your movements by about 20%. Move your hands more deliberately. Turn your head more slowly when someone calls your name. Walk at a measured pace rather than rushing. At first, this will feel artificial and slow motion, but to others, it will simply look confident and grounded. And interestingly, as you slow down your external movements, your internal state will calm as well. Personal space and touch. Understanding personal space is critical to social success. Most cultures recognize 4 zones. Intimate space, 0 to 18 inches, reserved for close relationships and physical intimacy. Personal space, 18 inches to 4 feet, for friends and casual conversation. Social space, 4 to 12 feet, for public interactions feet, for professional interactions and acquaintances. Public space, 12 plus feet, for public speaking and formal situations. Violations of these zones create discomfort. Standing too close too soon makes people want to escape. Staying too far away makes connection difficult. The key is to calibrate your proximity to the relationship. Start at the outer edge of social space with new people and gradually move closer as rapport develops. Watch for signals that you're too close. The person stepping back, leaning away, creating barriers with their arms or belongings. As for touch, it's powerfully connective but must be calibrated carefully. Safe, appropriate touch for new relationships includes handshakes, firm but not crushing, with good eye contact. Brief shoulder touch, 1 to 2 seconds, when emphasizing a point. Light touch on forearm or elbow when guiding someone. These brief, appropriate touches increase perceived likability and trustworthiness significantly, according to research by psychologist Matthew Hertenstein. But touch too soon, too long, or in inappropriate places, and you violate boundaries and lose trust. Mirroring, the empathy shortcut. Here's a fascinating phenomenon. When people feel connected, they unconsciously mirror each other's body language. If one person crosses their legs, the other might do the same shortly after. If one leans in, the other matches. This mirroring happens naturally and signals rapport. You can use this consciously to build connection. Subtly match the other person's energy level, posture, and gestures. not immediately or obviously, but gradually and naturally. If they're leaning back and relaxed, you lean back and relax. If they're leaning forward with enthusiasm, you mirror that energy. This mirroring creates unconscious rapport. The other person feels like you're on the same wavelength without knowing why. But be subtle. Obvious mirroring feels mocking and creepy. The key is matching their energy and general posture, not copying specific gestures. The smile spectrum. Not all smiles are created equal. The fake social smile we've all seen 1,000 times, lips stretched, no eye involvement, actually decreases likability. It signals insincerity. A genuine smile, called a Duchenne smile, after the researcher who identified it, involves the eyes. The skin around your eyes crinkles slightly. The smile reaches your entire face, not just your mouth. This genuine smile is universally recognized and unconsciously trusted. But here's what's even more attractive than a Duchenne smile: the subtle, almost smile. The slight upward curve at the corners of your mouth that suggests you're enjoying the moment, amused by something in your mind, or simply content. This micro-expression is incredibly attractive because it suggests internal happiness and self-sufficiency. Practice this. Think of something genuinely amusing or pleasant, and let that internal feeling show slightly on your face. Don't force a full smile, just let a hint of it surface. This is the expression that makes people curious about you. What are you thinking about? What's making you almost smile? Putting it all together, the cocktail party redux. Let's return to our networking event scenario, this time focusing specifically on body language. Marcus, from our earlier example, had impressive credentials but struggled with body language. His posture was slightly forward, leaning into conversations. His eyes were intense, almost aggressive in their focus. His gestures were fast and expansive, taking up space, but in an agitated way. He smiled frequently, but with tense, social smiles. He stood too close too soon. He touched people's arms, perhaps too often, trying to create connection artificially. All of this body language, none of it consciously hostile or inappropriate, created a subtle sense of discomfort in others. People couldn't have articulated why, but they felt vaguely pressured around Marcus. Eleanor, by contrast, had what we might call magnetizing body language. Her posture was upright but relaxed. Her eye contact was soft and present, with natural breaks when thinking. Her gestures were slower and more economical. She had a subtle, almost smile much of the time, suggesting internal contentment. She respected personal space, standing at comfortable distances. When she did touch a brief hand on someone's arm, it felt natural and welcome because it was rare and well-timed. Elena's body language communicated, "I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm present with you. I'm not anxious about how this is going. I'm genuinely enjoying this moment." And people unconsciously wanted more of that energy. Your body language audit. Here's your assignment. Video record yourself in a social interaction with permission, or ask a trusted friend to observe you and give feedback. Look for these specific things. 1. How open or closed is your body language? Are you creating barriers? 2. What's the quality of your eye contact? Too intense, too avoidant, or engaged and natural? 3. How's your posture? confident or collapsed, tense or relaxed. 4. How quickly do you move? Are your gestures deliberate or rushed? 5. Do you respect personal space appropriately? 6. What's your resting face? Tense, neutral, slightly pleasant? Identify 1 or 2 body language patterns to work on. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. It's authentic expression of an internal state of groundedness and confidence. Fix the inside first. Your body language will follow. In the next chapter, we'll explore the fascinating territory of vocal tonality and how the sound of your voice can make you irresistibly magnetic, regardless of what you're actually saying. Chapter 5. The voice that draws people in. Close your eyes for a moment and think about the most captivating speakers you've ever heard. Not necessarily the most eloquent or educated, the most captivating. People whose voice made you want to keep listening, even if you disagreed with their content. Chances are, what made them compelling wasn't what they said, but how they said it. The timbre of their voice, the rhythm of their speech, the strategic use of volume and pace. Their voice had a quality that pulled you in. Your voice is one of your most powerful tools of attraction, yet it's also one of the most neglected. Most people have never consciously thought about how they sound. They've certainly never trained their voice the way they might train their body at a gym or their mind through reading. This is a massive missed opportunity, because unlike your height, your facial features, or many other aspects of your physical presence, your voice is highly trainable. You can dramatically improve how you sound, and therefore how magnetically attractive you are through conscious practice. The science of vocal attraction. Researchers have identified specific vocal qualities that humans universally find attractive. These cross-cultural studies reveal consistent patterns. Lower pitch is perceived as more attractive in men. Deep voices are associated with masculinity, dominance, and trustworthiness. Men with lower-pitched voices are rated as more attractive and are statistically more successful in business and politics. Moderate pitch with variation is most attractive in women. Neither extremely high nor extremely low, but rich and varied. Monotone voices are universally unattractive regardless of pitch. Resonance matters more than pitch. A resonant voice, one that seems to come from the chest rather than the throat, is more attractive than a thin, nasal voice, regardless of pitch. Strategic pauses increase perceived intelligence. People who pause deliberately while speaking are rated as more intelligent and thoughtful than those who fill every gap with filler words. Slower speech is associated with confidence. People who speak too quickly are perceived as anxious or insecure. Those who speak at a moderate, measured pace are seen as confident and in control. But here's what's fascinating. These vocal qualities aren't just cosmetic. They're actually reflections of your nervous system state. When you're anxious, your voice rises in pitch, speeds up, and comes from your throat. When you're calm and confident, your voice naturally drops, slows down, and resonates from your chest. So once again, we come back to the same principle. You can't fake these qualities sustainably. You have to develop the internal state, the grounded presence, the genuine confidence, and then your voice will naturally reflect attract that state. However, you can also work in reverse. By consciously training your voice to have these qualities, you can actually shift your internal state. It's a bidirectional relationship. The foundation: breath support. Everything about vocal quality starts with breath, and most people breathe incorrectly for optimal voice production. Quick test. Put one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Take a normal breath. Which hand moves more? If your chest hand moved more, you're breathing shallowly from your upper lungs. This is how most people breathe most of the time, especially when anxious. It creates a thin, reedy voice that lacks power and resonance. For optimal voice production, you want to breathe from your diaphragm. Your belly should expand on the inhale, your chest remaining relatively still. This is called diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing. Here's why this matters for vocal attraction. Diaphragmatic breathing produces a fuller, richer tone. The voice resonates in your chest cavity, creating that attractive quality of depth and warmth. It allows for better volume control. You can speak louder without straining, or speak softly while remaining audible. It enables strategic pauses. With more air support, you can pause without gasping for breath mid-thought. It signals calm. Remember mirror neurons. When your breathing is deep and slow, others unconsciously register that you're calm and safe to be around. Practical exercise. Diaphragmatic breathing. Lie on your back with one hand on your chest, one on your belly. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, focusing on expanding your belly rather than your chest. Hold for a count of 4. Exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6, feeling your belly deflate. Do this for 5 minutes daily. Once it becomes natural, lying down, practice while sitting, then standing, then while speaking. Eventually, diaphragmatic breathing becomes your default, and your voice automatically gains richness and resonance. Pitch and resonance. Now let's talk about making your voice more attractive through pitch and resonance optimization. For those with naturally higher voices who want to sound more authoritative, you don't need to artificially lower your pitch to the point of sounding fake. Instead, focus on resonance. Imagine your voice vibrating in your chest rather than in your throat or nose. Try this exercise. Place your hand on your chest and hum. Can you feel the vibration? Now play with the pitch of your hum until you find the pitch where you feel maximum vibration in your chest. This is your optimal resonant pitch, the frequency your body naturally amplifies. Practice speaking at this pitch. It will feel slightly lower than your habitual speaking voice, but it won't feel forced or fake. This is your natural resonant frequency, and speaking here will make your voice richer and more attractive without strain. The power of pace. Here's a simple truth. Most people speak too quickly. We speak quickly because we're nervous, afraid the other person will interrupt, afraid we'll lose their attention, afraid silence will be awkward. So we rush, filling every gap, barely breathing between thoughts. This fast-paced speech accomplishes the exact opposite of what we intend. Instead of keeping people engaged, it exhausts them. Instead of seeming enthusiastic, we seem anxious. Instead of demonstrating value, we signal insecurity. Attractive speech has a measured, deliberate pace. Not artificially slow, that sounds condescending, but unhurried, comfortable, like someone who knows their words have value and isn't worried about holding space. Here are the numbers. Most people speak at 150 to 160 words per minute in casual conversation. Anxious people can hit 180 to 200 plus words per minute. The most compelling speakers, they average around 120 to 140 words per minute, noticeably slower than the average person. This slower pace creates several effects. It makes you easier to understand. People can actually process what you're saying rather than scrambling to keep up. It signals confidence. You're not rushing because you're not worried about losing people's attention. It creates emphasis. When everything isn't rushed, the naturally important words stand out. It allows for strategic pauses. You have space to breathe, think, and let important points land. Practical exercise. Slow it down. For the next week, consciously speak 20% slower than normal. This will feel glacially slow at first. You'll be convinced people are getting impatient, but time yourself. What feels slow to you is probably just right to your listeners. Record yourself speaking at your normal pace, then at this deliberately slower pace. Listen back. The slower version will sound more authoritative, more thoughtful, and more compelling, even though it feels weird when you're doing it. The strategic use of volume. Volume is another underutilized tool in vocal attraction. Most people operate at a fairly consistent volume level, perhaps slightly louder when excited, slightly softer when uncertain. But strategic variation in volume can dramatically increase your magnetism. Here's the secret. The most compelling speakers sometimes speak more quietly than you'd expect. They draw you in by making you lean in to hear them. This creates active engagement rather than passive listening. Try this in conversation. When you're about to make an important point, don't raise your volume to emphasize it. Lower your volume slightly. Drop into a more intimate, confidential tone. Watch how the other person instinctively leans in, their attention sharpening. This technique works because it reverses expectations. We expect important things to be said loudly. When something important is whispered, it feels like a secret, like privileged information. It creates a bubble of intimacy, even in a crowded room. Of course, you also need to be able to project when appropriate, to fill a room with your voice when necessary. But the magnetic speakers are those who have full range from powerful projection to intimate near whisper and who know when to use each. The filler word epidemic. Like, basically, actually, literally. These filler words and phrases infiltrate our speech, often without our awareness, and they kill our credibility and attractiveness. Filler words serve a purpose. They hold space while we think, but they signal uncertainty and diminish perceived intelligence. Research shows that people who use frequent filler words are rated as less competent, less confident, and less trustworthy. The solution isn't to never think while speaking, it's to replace filler words with silence. When you need a moment to think, just pause. Say nothing. The silence will feel enormous to you, but will actually sound confident and thoughtful to your listener. Practical exercise. The filler word challenge. Record yourself speaking for 5 minutes on any topic. Count your filler words. Most people are shocked by the number. Now try again, but this time, every time you feel the urge to say a filler word, pause silently instead. It will feel unnatural at first, but the recording will sound dramatically better. Practice this until strategic silence becomes your default instead of filler words. Your perceived intelligence and confidence will skyrocket. Vocal variety, the spice of speech. Monotone voices are universally unattractive. It doesn't matter how attractive your pitch is or how perfect your pace. If you speak in a flat, unchanging tone, people will struggle to stay engaged. Vocal variety means intentional variation in pitch, moving up and down naturally to emphasize different words and convey emotion. Pace, speeding up slightly for exciting parts, slowing down for important points. Volume, louder for emphasis, softer for intimacy. Tone, warm, serious, playful, authoritative, matching your tone to your content. Think of your voice as a musical instrument. A piano played with only one key is boring, no matter how pretty that key sounds. But play the full range of the instrument and you create something compelling. Listen to great audiobook narrators or podcasters. Notice how their voice is constantly shifting, not dramatically or artificially, but naturally flowing through different qualities based on what they're expressing. The smile in your voice. Here's a subtle technique that makes an enormous difference. Smiling while you speak, even when the other person can't see you. Try this experiment. Record yourself saying the same sentence twice. Once with a neutral expression, once while genuinely smiling. Listen back. You can literally hear the smile. The voice becomes warmer, more friendly, more inviting. This happens because smiling changes the shape of your mouth and throat, affecting vocal resonance. But it's not about forcing a fake smile. It's about finding genuine warmth or amusement and letting that show in your voice. Phone sales professionals are often taught to keep a mirror at their desk to ensure they're smiling while talking to customers. It works because the smile translates through the voice, making them seem more friendly and trustworthy, even though the customer can't see them. Real-world application, the podcast test. Here's how to know if you're getting this right. Imagine you have a podcast. Would people want to listen to it, not because of what you're saying, but because of how you sound? Some people have voices you could listen to read a phone book. Others have voices that make you want to change the channel, even when the content is interesting. The difference is entirely in the vocal qualities we've been discussing. Record yourself speaking for 10 minutes about anything, a story from your life, your opinions on a topic you care about, whatever. Then listen back, as if you're a stranger hearing this voice for the first time. Would you want to keep listening? Be honest. If not, identify which vocal qualities need work. Is it the pace, the filler words, the monotone delivery, the thin nasal resonance? Pick one element to focus on, practice it deliberately, and record yourself again in a week. You'll be amazed at how quickly your voice can improve. The voice-body connection. Remember, your voice is an extension of your body and nervous system. You can't sustainably produce an attractive voice while your body is tense and your breathing is shallow. This is why all these elements work together. Grounded presence creates the physical conditions for good breathing. Good breathing enables resonant voice production. Strategic silence requires the confidence that comes from groundedness. It's all interconnected. If you're struggling with voice work, return to the fundamentals. Ground yourself physically, Breathe deeply from your diaphragm. Relax your throat and jaw. The attractive vocal qualities will follow naturally from this foundation. Your voice training plan. Here's your practice plan for the next 2 weeks. Week 1. Focus on breath and resonance. 5 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing practice daily. Find your optimal resonant pitch and practice speaking there. Record yourself daily and listen back. Week 2. Focus on pace and pauses. Consciously slow your speech by 20%. Replace all filler words with silent pauses. Practice the strategic quiet voice technique. By the end of 2 weeks of focused practice, your voice will be noticeably more attractive. People will listen more attentively when you speak. You'll feel more confident in conversations. And you'll have developed a skill that will serve you for life. In the next chapter, we'll explore the fascinating psychology of emotional intelligence, how understanding and managing emotions, yours and others, makes you magnetically attractive in ways that have nothing to do with words or techniques. Chapter 6. The Magnetic Pull of Emotional Intelligence. I once watched a senior executive completely lose a room. He was smart, articulate, and had good slides. But when someone asked a challenging question, his face tightened, his tone became defensive, and you could feel the energy shift. People stopped asking questions. The engagement evaporated. All his polish and preparation couldn't overcome his emotional reactivity. Later that day, I watched a junior team member present rough, incomplete ideas to the same group. Her slides were basic. She stumbled over some words. But when someone challenged her thinking, she paused, genuinely considered the feedback and said, "That's a really good point. I hadn't considered that angle. Can you tell me more about your thinking there?" The room leaned in. The challenging questioner became collaborative. The energy shifted from adversarial to exploratory. By the end, people were volunteering to help her refine her ideas. What was the difference? Emotional intelligence. The executive had knowledge and status, but lacked emotional regulation. The team member had neither formal authority nor polished presentation skills, but she had something more powerful, the ability to manage her emotions and read the emotions of others. This is the invisible force that determines social success more reliably than intelligence, attractiveness, or social status. And unlike those other qualities, emotional intelligence is entirely learnable. What emotional intelligence actually means. Psychologist Daniel Goleman identified 5 core components of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness. The ability to recognize and understand your own emotions as they happen. Self-regulation. The ability to manage your emotional reactions rather than being controlled by them. Motivation. Internal drive that goes beyond external rewards. Empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Social skills. The ability to build rapport, influence, and navigate social situations. Of these 5, the first 2, self-awareness and self-regulation, are foundational. You can't understand others' emotions if you don't understand your own. You can't navigate complex social situations if you can't manage your own reactivity. Here's what makes emotionally intelligent people magnetically attractive. They create safety. When you're around someone with high emotional intelligence, you can relax. You don't have to manage their emotions. You don't have to walk on eggshells. You don't have to be anything other than yourself. This is incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. The foundation: emotional self-awareness. Most people have surprisingly little awareness of their emotional states. They're angry, but don't realize they're angry until they snap at someone. They're anxious, but interpret it as excitement or just being careful. They're hurt, but mask it with humor or aggression. This emotional blindness creates problems in two ways. First, unacknowledged emotions leak out in your behavior, body language, and tone. You think you're hiding your irritation, but everyone can feel it. You believe you're masking your insecurity, but it shows in subtle ways. Second, when you can't name your emotions, you can't manage them. You're at their mercy, reacting unconsciously rather than responding consciously. Developing emotional self-awareness is simpler than you might think. It requires regular check-ins with yourself throughout the day. Set a reminder on your phone 3 times a day that asks, "What am I feeling right now?" Stop and actually identify the emotion, not fine or okay, an actual emotion. Anxious, excited, frustrated, content, sad, angry, peaceful. Just naming the emotion creates distance from it. You move from "I am angry" to "I am experiencing anger." This subtle shift gives you agency. You're no longer the emotion. You're the observer of the emotion. The practice of non-reactive presence. Here's where emotional intelligence becomes magnetic. When you can feel strong emotions without being controlled by them, you create a sense of groundedness that others find deeply attractive. Think about someone having a complete meltdown, yelling, crying, totally dysregulated. Now imagine 2 different people responding. Person A matches their energy, gets upset, defensive, or tries frantically to fix the situation. Their own emotional regulation is hijacked by the other person's dysregulation. Person B remains calm, present, and empathetic. They acknowledge the person's distress without absorbing it. They're concerned, but not consumed. They're available, but not enmeshed. Who do you want to be around in a crisis? Person B, obviously. That non-reactive presence is like an anchor in a storm. It's profoundly attractive because it's profoundly safe. This doesn't mean being cold or detached. It means being able to hold space for difficult emotions, yours and others, without being controlled by them. Practical exercise, the RAIN technique. When you feel a strong emotion arising, use the RAIN technique. Recognize, notice, and name the emotion. I'm feeling anxious right now. Allow. Don't try to push it away or change it. Let it be present. It's okay to feel anxious. Investigate. Get curious about it. Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts accompany it? What triggered it? Non-identification. Remember that you are not your emotions. You are the awareness experiencing the emotion. I am experiencing anxiety, but I am not my anxiety. This practice, done regularly, dramatically increases your emotional self-regulation. You move from being reactive to being responsive. And that shift is transformative for your attractiveness. Reading emotional undercurrents. Emotionally intelligent people can read the room. They pick up on subtle shifts in mood and energy. They notice when someone's words don't match their body language. They sense when someone is saying, "I'm fine," but clearly isn't. This perceptiveness isn't psychic. It's the result of paying attention to micro signals. Facial expressions. The fleeting micro expressions that flash across someone's face before they consciously control their features. Body language. The tension or relaxation in someone's posture, the openness or closedness of their stance. Vocal qualities. The slight tightness in voice that indicates stress, the forced brightness that masks sadness. Energy. The intangible but palpable shift in someone's presence. Most people are so focused on what they're going to say next that they miss these signals entirely. But when you're grounded and present, not performing or managing impressions, you have mental bandwidth available to actually perceive what's happening in others. Practical exercise. The emotion reading game. Watch videos of people with the sound off. Can you identify what emotions they're experiencing just from their facial expressions and body language? This is a trainable skill. The more you practice conscious observation, the better you get at reading emotional states. Then try it in real life. In your next conversation, spend 50% of your attention on what the person is saying and 50% on how they seem to be feeling. Notice the congruence or incongruence between words and affect. The art of empathic listening. There's listening, and then there's empathic listening. Regular listening is waiting for your turn to talk while someone else speaks. Empathic listening is actually attempting to understand the other person's emotional experience. Here's what empathic listening looks like in practice. You reflect emotions, not just content. Instead of saying, "So you need to finish the project by Friday," you say, "It sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed by this deadline." You validate before you advise. Instead of jumping to solutions, you first acknowledge the legitimacy of their feelings. That makes total sense that you'd be frustrated. You ask about feelings. How are you feeling about that? Becomes a regular part of your conversational repertoire. You tolerate emotional expression. When someone gets upset, you don't rush to make them feel better. You let them feel what they feel. This kind of listening is rare. Most people are so uncomfortable with emotions, theirs and others, that they avoid, minimize, or try to fix them immediately. The person who can simply be with someone's emotions without needing to change them is providing a profound gift. The power of emotional validation. Here's a simple formula that will transform your relationships. Before responding to someone's problem, validate their emotional experience. Not helpful. Why don't you just talk to your boss about it? Helpful. That sounds really frustrating. I can understand why you'd be upset. Pause. Would it help to brainstorm some options? That validation, even just a sentence or two, completely changes the dynamic. The person feels heard, which allows them to move from emotional processing to problem solving. When you skip validation and jump straight to solutions, people often resist your advice because they don't feel understood. Validation doesn't mean agreement. You can validate someone's feelings while completely disagreeing with their interpretation or actions. I can see why you're angry, even though I understand the situation differently. Managing your own emotional reactions. Let's get practical about one of the most challenging aspects of emotional intelligence, staying regulated when someone else is pushing your buttons. Someone criticizes you unfairly. Your teenage child is being deliberately difficult. A colleague takes credit for your work. Your partner says something hurtful. In these moments, every fiber of your being wants to react, to defend, attack, withdraw, or collapse. This is where emotional intelligence becomes a superpower. The ability to feel the reactive impulse but choose a different response is what separates magnetic people from average people. Here's the technique. When you feel triggered, create a micro pause. Literally count to 3 in your head before responding. In that pause, ask yourself, what's the outcome I want here? Will my reactive response get me that outcome? Usually the answer is no. Your reactive response, snapping back, getting defensive, shutting down, will escalate the situation or damage the relationship. But by creating that tiny pause, you give yourself the option to choose a more effective response. This isn't about suppressing your emotions, it's about decoupling automatic stimulus response patterns. Feel the anger, but don't let it control your behavior. Real-world application. The difficult conversation. Let me give you a concrete example of emotional intelligence in action. Tom needed to give critical feedback to a colleague who was defensive and sensitive. His previous attempts had ended in arguments that damaged their working relationship. This time, Tom started by managing his own emotional state. Before the conversation, he did the 3-point grounding exercise and set an intention. My goal is to improve the work and strengthen the relationship, not to prove I'm right. During the conversation, when his colleague became defensive, Tom paused. He noticed his own reactivity, the impulse to argue back, to defend his position. Instead, he said, I can see this feedback is hard to hear. I want you to know I'm bringing this up because I respect your work and want to help you succeed. That validation completely shifted the energy. His colleague relaxed and became receptive. They had the most productive, difficult conversation of their professional relationship. The difference? Tom's emotional intelligence allowed him to remain regulated when his colleague became dysregulated, to validate emotions before addressing content, and to keep the bigger picture in mind rather than getting lost in ego defensiveness. The vulnerability paradox. Here's something counterintuitive. Appropriate vulnerability is magnetic, not oversharing or emotional dumping, but the willingness to acknowledge your own imperfections and emotional experiences. When you pretend to have it all together, you create distance. People can't connect with perfection. But when you're willing to say, I really struggled with that, or I'm feeling nervous about this presentation, or I made a mistake, you create the conditions for real connection. The key word is appropriate. Emotional intelligence includes knowing what's appropriate to share in different contexts. With close friends, deep vulnerability is appropriate. With new acquaintances, light vulnerability, sharing minor imperfections, or gentle self-deprecation creates connection without overwhelming. What makes this magnetic is that it gives others permission to be human too. Around someone who admits imperfection, people can relax and stop performing perfection themselves. Your emotional intelligence development plan. Here's your practice for the next 2 weeks. Daily, 3 emotion check-ins. Set reminders and actually identify what you're feeling. In conversations, practice the 50-50 attention split, half on content, half on emotions. When triggered, create the 3-second pause before responding. Ask, what outcome do I want? Once this week, use the RAIN technique with a difficult emotion. Don't try to fix or change it, just observe it. With one person. Practice empathic listening. Reflect their emotions, validate before advising, and sit with their feelings without trying to fix them. Emotional intelligence takes time to develop, but the payoff is enormous. As you become more emotionally aware and regulated, you'll notice that people naturally gravitate toward you. You become a safe harbor in an emotionally stormy world, and that is profoundly, magnetically attractive. In the next chapter, we'll explore the fascinating dynamics of social energy, how to read the energy in any room, and how to become someone who elevates rather than depletes the energy of others. Chapter 7. Mastering Social Energy. Every room has an energy. You can feel it the moment you walk in. Some spaces feel alive, buzzing with possibility. Others feel heavy, draining, almost oppressive. And in every space, certain people elevate the energy while others deplete it. The most magnetically attractive people are energy givers, not energy takers. They walk into a room and the temperature rises, not because they're loud or performing, but because they bring a quality of aliveness that's contagious. This isn't mystical or unlearnable. Social energy operates on specific, identifiable principles. And once you understand these principles, you can consciously become someone who elevates every space you enter. Understanding energy exchange. Every human interaction involves an exchange of energy. Think of it like an invisible transaction. Some interactions leave you energized, like you've received more than you gave. Others leave you depleted, like something essential was drained from you. Energy givers tend to share certain qualities. They're genuinely curious about others. They listen more than they talk. They make you feel seen and valued. They bring positive emotion, humor, enthusiasm, warmth. They're comfortable with themselves, so you can relax around them. They celebrate your wins rather than competing. They acknowledge rather than minimize your challenges. Energy takers, by contrast. They make every conversation about themselves. They complain chronically without taking action. They're competitive rather than collaborative. They need constant reassurance and validation. They create drama or manufacture crisis. They're critical and judgmental. They leave you feeling inadequate or anxious. Here's the critical insight. Being an energy giver isn't about being extroverted, entertaining, or always positive. Some of the most draining people I know are highly social and seemingly upbeat. And some of the most energizing people are quiet and serious. The difference is in the quality of presence and the nature of the exchange. The foundation, giving from fullness. You can't give energy you don't have. This is why self-care isn't selfish. It's the prerequisite for being able to elevate others. Think of yourself as a reservoir. When your reservoir is full, you can give generously without depletion. When your reservoir is empty, every interaction drains you further, and you unconsciously become an energy taker, needing validation, seeking attention, pulling energy from others to fill your own depleted tank. This is why the work we've been doing throughout this book, grounding yourself, managing your emotions, developing internal security, is so essential. You must fill your own reservoir before you can give to others. Practical ways to keep your reservoir full. Adequate sleep, non-negotiable. Regular physical movement. Time in nature. Creative expression. Meaningful work. Deep connections with people who energize you. Activities that produce flow states. Spiritual or contemplative practice. Pleasure and play. Notice what's on your list and what's missing. Then protect the things that fill you as fiercely as you protect work deadlines. They're not optional extras. They're essential maintenance for your ability to be magnetically attractive. Reading the room. Energy-elevating people are highly attuned to the energy already present in a space. They don't impose their own energy regardless of context. They read the room and calibrate accordingly. Walk into a funeral with high-energy enthusiasm and you're not an energy giver. You're oblivious and inappropriate. Walk into a depressed, cynical meeting with genuine, not forced, optimism and possibility thinking, and you might shift the entire dynamic. Reading the room requires observing before engaging. Don't immediately start talking. Take a moment to sense the energy. Is it tense or relaxed? Formal or casual? High energy or low? Match that energy first, then gradually introduce the shift you want to create. Noticing who's struggling. Is someone being ignored or talked over? Is someone uncomfortable or out of place? Energy givers include the excluded and elevate those who are struggling. Tracking engagement. Are people genuinely interested or politely enduring? If you're speaking and people are checked out, that's feedback. The energy giver adjusts rather than pushing harder. Sensing inflection points. There are moments in any gathering when the energy could go either direction. The energy giver recognizes these moments and gently influences toward elevation. The art of energy. Elevation. So how do you actually elevate social energy? Here are specific, practical techniques. 1. Bring genuine curiosity. The fastest way to elevate energy is to be genuinely interested in others. Not interrogating them, not using questions as a social technique, genuinely curious about their experience, perspective, and story. When someone feels your authentic interest, they light up. They become more animated, more open, more themselves. Your curiosity gives them permission to be interesting, which elevates their energy, which elevates the entire interaction. 2. Celebrate without competing. When someone shares good news or an accomplishment, energy givers celebrate fully. No subtle undercutting, no pivoting to their own achievements, no qualifying the win, just genuine, wholehearted celebration. That's amazing. Tell me more about how you made that happen. This is rarer than you'd think. Most people can't celebrate others without feeling diminished themselves. But when you're operating from fullness rather than scarcity, someone else's win doesn't threaten you. It delights you. 3. Acknowledge the elephant. Often the thing draining energy from a room is something everyone feels but no one says. The energy giver is willing to acknowledge the elephant. I notice we're all being very careful with each other. Can we talk about what's actually happening? Or, this is awkward, right? Let's just acknowledge that. Simply naming the unspoken tension often releases it, allowing energy to flow again. 4. Introduce lightness strategically. Humor is one of the fastest energy elevators when used skillfully. The key is that the humor should unite rather than divide, include rather than exclude, and never punch down. Self-deprecating humor that's gentle and genuine, not self-flagellating, works well. Observational humor about shared experiences works well. Finding the absurdity in difficult situations works well. What doesn't work? sarcasm that masks hostility, jokes at others' expense, humor that requires explaining, or forced cheerfulness that denies legitimate difficulty. 5. Offer authentic appreciation. Specific, sincere appreciation is extraordinarily energizing. Not generic compliments or flattery, but noticing something specific about someone and acknowledging it. I really appreciate how you made sure everyone got a chance to speak in that meeting. The way you explained that complex idea made it so clear. That's a real skill. I noticed you went out of your way to include the new person. That was kind. These small moments of recognition elevate both the receiver and the entire space. People feel valued, seen, and inspired to bring more of their best selves. The energy vampire. What to avoid. Let's be clear about what depletes energy, so you can consciously avoid these patterns. Chronic complaining without action. Venting occasionally is healthy. Complaining endlessly about things you're unwilling to change is energy draining. One-upping. When someone shares an experience, the energy vampire immediately shares a bigger, better, worse version. This isn't bonding, it's competing and it's exhausting. Unsolicited advice. Jumping in with solutions before someone has asked for them communicates that you're not really listening. It depletes energy. Creating unnecessary drama. Manufacturing crisis, catastrophizing situations, or making everything about yourself is profoundly draining to be around. Constant negativity. Some people make criticism their personality. Every suggestion is met with why it won't work. Every positive is countered with a negative. This slowly sucks the life out of any space. Needing constant validation, fishing for compliments, requiring reassurance, demanding emotional caretaking. These patterns turn others into your emotional support system rather than allowing for mutual exchange. If you recognize yourself in any of these patterns, don't judge yourself, just commit to changing them. Awareness is the first step. Practical exercise. The energy audit. For the next week, after every significant social interaction, ask yourself, did I give energy or take energy in that interaction? Be honest. If you're not sure, that's probably a sign you took more than you gave. Energy giving leaves you feeling full, even if tired, while energy taking leaves you feeling depleted and slightly guilty or anxious. Track your patterns. Are there certain contexts where you tend to be an energy taker? Certain emotional states? Certain people? Once you identify your patterns, you can consciously shift them. Real world. Application. The team meeting. Let me give you a concrete example of energy elevation in action. Rachel was joining a team meeting where morale was low. The project was behind schedule, tensions were high, and the previous meeting had devolved into blame and defensiveness. Rachel could have entered matching that low energy, complaining about the timeline, adding to the negativity, or staying silent to avoid conflict. Instead, she chose to elevate. She started by acknowledging reality without catastrophizing. This project has been challenging. We're behind where we wanted to be, and that's frustrating. And I'm actually impressed by how much we've accomplished, given the obstacles. This simple reframe, acknowledging difficulty while also highlighting achievement, shifted something. People sat up slightly. Then she became genuinely curious. I want to understand what's been the biggest challenge for each person, not to problem solve right now, just to hear each other. By creating space for people to be heard without jumping to solutions, she allowed the underlying tensions to be acknowledged. The energy in the room shifted from defensive to open. Finally, she brought possibility thinking. Given what we've learned, what's one small thing we could do differently this week that might make a meaningful impact? By the end of the meeting, the energy was completely different. People were collaborating instead of competing, brainstorming instead of complaining, energized instead of defeated. That's the power of conscious energy elevation. The contagion effect. Energy is contagious. When you bring grounded, positive, engaged energy to a space, it spreads. People unconsciously match your energy state through mirror neurons and emotional contagion. This is why leadership isn't really about position or authority, it's about energy. The person who sets the emotional tone becomes the de facto leader, regardless of title. But this is also a responsibility. If you're bringing anxious, negative, or draining energy, that spreads too. Your mood affects the mood of everyone around you. This isn't about toxic positivity, pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about being the thermostat rather than the thermometer. The thermometer reflects the temperature. The thermostat sets it. Boundaries, the prerequisite for sustainable energy giving. Here's a crucial caveat. You cannot be an energy giver without boundaries. Boundaries protect your reservoir. They ensure you're giving from fullness rather than depletion. They prevent you from being drained by energy vampires who would take everything you offer and demand more. Healthy boundaries might look like limiting time with people who consistently drain you, saying no to commitments that would leave you depleted, ending conversations that have become circular complaining, protecting time for activities that restore you, not taking responsibility for others' emotional states, walking away from situations that are toxic. Some people worry that boundaries make them less generous or less kind. The opposite is true. Without boundaries, you eventually become resentful and depleted, which makes you an energy taker. With boundaries, you can give generously from a place of fullness. Your energy elevation practice. Here's your work for the next 2 weeks. Week 1. Awareness. Do the energy audit after every significant interaction. Notice what fills your reservoir and what depletes it. Identify your energy-taking patterns without judgment. Week 2. Action. In 3 interactions, consciously practice energy giving. Set 1 new boundary to protect your reservoir. Bring genuine curiosity to every conversation. Track what happens. Notice how people respond differently to you. Notice how you feel after interactions and notice the ripple effects of your energy elevation. Becoming an energy giver is one of the most powerful ways to become magnetically attractive. People will seek you out, want to be around you, and feel better in your presence, often without being able to articulate why. In the next chapter, we'll explore the often misunderstood concept of authenticity, what it actually means, why it's attractive, and how to cultivate it without becoming self-indulgent or inappropriate. Chapter 8. The Authenticity Advantage. Just be yourself might be the most useless advice ever given. Which self? The anxious self, the performing self, the insecure self. The self that emerges after 3 drinks? The self you are with your grandmother versus the self you are with your friends. We contain multitudes. We have different selves for different contexts. So when someone says be yourself, what they're really saying is access the version of yourself that's most natural, least performed, most grounded in genuine presence. That's what we mean by authenticity. And it's extraordinarily attractive, not because it's comfortable or easy, but because it's rare. What authenticity actually means. Authenticity isn't sharing every thought and feeling without filter. That's not authenticity. That's poor boundaries and lack of self-regulation. Authenticity isn't refusing to adapt to social contexts. That's not authenticity. That's social rigidity and immaturity. Real authenticity is alignment between your internal experience and external expression, appropriately calibrated to context. It's being who you actually are while being skillful about how you express it. Think of it this way. You're speaking to a child, a colleague, and a romantic partner. Authentic communication with each is different because the relationship is different. But in all 3 cases, what you say comes from a genuine place rather than a performed place. The authentic version with your colleague might be, I appreciate your feedback. I need some time to think about it. The inauthentic version might be, you're absolutely right, while seething inside, or that's ridiculous. Aggressive defensiveness. Same internal experience, feeling defensive, different expressions. The authentic version acknowledges your state while remaining appropriate to the relationship. Why? Inauthenticity. Leaks. Here's the problem with trying to be someone you're not. Humans are exceptionally good at detecting incongruence. When your words say one thing but your body says another, people feel the dissonance, even if they can't articulate it. You say, I'm happy for you, about someone's promotion while your jaw is clenched. You claim to be totally fine, while your voice is tight with tension. You laugh at a joke you don't find funny, but the laugh doesn't reach your eyes. These micro-incongruences register unconsciously. They create a vague sense of unease or mistrust. People can't quite put their finger on it, but something feels off. This is why performance is exhausting and ultimately ineffective. You're constantly monitoring and adjusting your external presentation to hide your internal reality. But the internal reality keeps leaking through in micro-expressions, body language, and energetic quality. Authenticity is easier precisely because it doesn't require this constant monitoring. What you feel and what you show are aligned, so there's nothing to hide, nothing to manage. The vulnerability sweet spot. Authenticity requires vulnerability, the willingness to be seen as you actually are, rather than as a carefully managed image. But there's a crucial distinction between healthy vulnerability and oversharing. Healthy vulnerability admits imperfection. I really struggled with that project. Acknowledges uncertainty. I'm not sure what the right answer is here. Shares appropriate emotion. I'm feeling nervous about this. Presentation. Asks for help when needed. Could you give me feedback on this? Admits mistakes. I handled that poorly. Let me try again. Oversharing. Dumps emotional processing on others. Let me tell you about my terrible childhood for the next hour. Uses others as therapists. I need you to help me figure out why I always seeks validation through victim narratives. Everyone always treats me this way because shares intimate details, inappropriate to the relationship. So my sex life has been makes every conversation about your problems. The sweet spot is vulnerability. That's 1. Appropriate to the relationship. You share more deeply with close friends than new acquaintances. And 2. Boundaried. You share your experience without making it the other person's responsibility to fix. 3. Balanced. You're both comfortable being vulnerable and comfortable holding space for others. 4. Selective. You share what's relevant and meaningful, not every passing thought or feeling. The authenticity paradox. Here's what's counterintuitive. Being authentic doesn't mean sharing everything. It means only sharing what's genuinely true for you and being okay with not sharing the rest. The performance-focused person shares what they think will make them look good, suppressing what might make them look bad. This is inauthentic. The oversharing person shares indiscriminately, without filters or boundaries. This is also inauthentic, because it lacks the discrimination that real self-awareness provides. The authentic person shares selectively, only what's true, only what's relevant, only what serves connection. They're comfortable both with vulnerability and with privacy. Authenticity. In practice, the 3 questions. Before sharing something about yourself, run it through these 3 questions. 1. Is it true? Not just factually accurate, but genuinely representative of your experience. 2. Is it necessary? Does it serve connection or the conversation, or are you just filling space? 3. Is it kind to yourself and others? Does this sharing honor dignity and boundaries? If all 3 answers are yes, share. If not, hold it. This simple filter prevents both performance, sharing what you think people want to hear, and oversharing, dumping without discrimination. The permission to evolve. One reason people struggle with authenticity is they've created a fixed identity, a story about who they are, and they feel they must perform that identity consistently. I'm the funny one. I'm the responsible one. I'm not good at emotions. I'm always late. These identity stories become prisons. You perform the role even when it doesn't fit the moment. You suppress parts of yourself that don't match the identity. You resist growth that would require updating your self-story. Authentic people give themselves permission to evolve. They're comfortable with contradiction, with changing, with being different in different contexts. They don't need to maintain a consistent persona because they're not performing an identity. They're expressing whatever is genuinely present. This week, you might be struggling. Next week, you might be thriving. That's not inconsistency. That's being human. The authentic person can say, I was wrong about that, or I'm thinking about this differently now, without experiencing it as a threat to their identity. Practical exercise, the authenticity audit. Think about the main roles you play in life: professional, parent, partner, friend, etc. For each role, ask, how much of my real self shows up in this role? What parts of me do I suppress or hide in this context? Am I performing a version of this role that's not really me? What would it look like to bring more authentic presence to this role? Often, you'll discover that you're performing outdated versions of yourself. The professional you might be based on what you thought was expected early in your career, but no longer serves you. The parent you might be performing the parent your parents were, rather than the parent you actually are. Authenticity is continuously updating your external expression to match your current internal reality. The cost of inauthenticity. Let me be blunt about what you lose when you abandon authenticity. Energy. Performing is exhausting. It requires constant vigilance and adjustment. Connection. People connect with people, not performances. Inauthenticity prevents genuine intimacy. Self-trust. When you consistently betray your internal experience to manage external perception, you undermine your own sense of self. Opportunity. The right people for you, friends, partners, opportunities, can't find you if you're hiding behind a mask. Peace. There's a deep relaxation that comes from simply being yourself. You can never experience that while performing. I've watched people maintain performances for years. The person who pretends to love their career when they're miserable. The person who acts confident while internally terrified. The person who performs happiness while deeply depressed. The performance might fool some people some of the time, but it never fools you. And the internal dissonance between who you are and who you're pretending to be creates a background hum of anxiety that colors everything. Real-world application. The authenticity pivot. Michael spent the first 15 years of his career performing ambitious corporate professional. He said the right things in meetings, pursued promotions he didn't really want, socialized at events he hated, and maintained a professional persona that was polished but hollow. He was successful by conventional standards but increasingly miserable. The cognitive dissonance between his authentic self and his performed self was eating him alive. The pivot started small. In a meeting, instead of giving the strategic answer he thought people wanted, he said, "Honestly, I don't think that's the right approach. Here's why." It was terrifying. But something interesting happened. People respected the honest perspective more than the political answer. Some colleagues privately thanked him for saying what they'd been thinking. He started bringing more of his authentic self to work. He admitted when he didn't know something. He shared when he was struggling. He stopped pretending to be interested in things he wasn't interested in. Within 6 months, his work life transformed. Not because he suddenly became different, but because he stopped performing and started being himself. The energy he'd been spending on impression management became available for actual work and genuine relationships. Some people were confused by the change, a few were put off, but the right people, the ones aligned with who he actually was, showed up and connected deeply. Authenticity as social courage. Being authentic in a world that rewards performance requires courage. It means risking disapproval, rejection, or misunderstanding. It means giving up control over how people perceive you. But here's what you gain: freedom. The freedom to simply exist as you are. The freedom from the exhausting performance. The freedom to connect genuinely with others. The freedom to be liked or disliked for who you actually are, rather than for a mask you're wearing. And counterintuitively, this vulnerability, this willingness to be seen as you are, is what makes you most attractive. Because everyone is exhausted from performing. when they encounter someone who's simply authentically themselves. It's like finding water in the desert. You give others permission to drop their masks by dropping yours first. Your authenticity practice. Here's your work for this week. Daily practice. Choose one moment each day to be 10% more authentic than you would normally be. Maybe that's admitting you don't know something. Maybe it's sharing a genuine reaction instead of a polite one. Maybe it's expressing a preference you usually suppress. Start small. Authenticity is a muscle that strengthens with use. The alignment. Check. 3 times this week, pause and ask yourself, is what I'm saying, doing right now aligned with what I'm actually thinking, feeling? If not, what would alignment look like? The selective sharing exercise. Practice the 3 questions, true, necessary, kind, before sharing personal information. Notice what you discover about your sharing patterns. Remember, authenticity isn't a destination you reach, it's a practice you commit to, continuously bringing your external expression into alignment with your internal experience, in ways that are both genuine and skillful. In the next chapter, we'll explore the often overlooked dimension of presence, how to be fully here, fully now, in a way that makes you magnetically attractive simply by the quality of your attention. Chapter 9. The Power of Full Presence. I once had coffee with someone who changed how I understood attention. We sat for 90 minutes, and in that entire time, she didn't check her phone once. She didn't glance around the cafe. She didn't mentally draft her next response while I was talking. She was simply there, fully present, fully attentive, fully engaged. When we parted, I realized something remarkable. I couldn't remember exactly what we'd talked about, but I felt deeply seen, heard, and valued. Her presence, the quality of her attention, had been more meaningful than any specific words exchanged. This is the power of full presence. In a world where everyone is distracted, divided attention has become the norm, which means full presence has become extraordinarily rare and valuable. The attention crisis. Let's be honest about where we are collectively. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. Our attention spans have been shredded by constant digital interruption. We've lost the capacity to simply be with another person without simultaneously being somewhere else. This isn't a moral failing. It's the predictable result of technologies designed to capture and fragment our attention. But it does create an enormous opportunity. In a world of divided attention, full presence is a superpower. When you give someone your complete attention, no phone, no wandering thoughts, no mental multitasking, you're offering something most people almost never receive, and it's intoxicating. What full presence actually feels like. Presence isn't a concept, it's a felt experience. Here's how you know you're present. Your mind is here, not in the past or future. You're aware of sensory details, sounds, sights, sensations. You're not rehearsing what you'll say next. Time feels elastic, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. You notice things you'd normally miss. There's a quality of aliveness, of being fully alive in this moment. You're available to be surprised. Here's how others know you're present. Your eyes are soft but focused. You're not fidgeting or displaying restless energy. Your responses reveal you actually heard what they said. You notice things about them, subtle mood shifts, unspoken concerns. There's a felt sense of being held in your attention. They feel more interesting and alive around you. Presence is a gift you give, and it's one of the most valuable gifts available. The obstacles to presence. Why is presence so difficult? Several factors conspire against it. 1. The planning mind. We spend most of our mental energy planning what we'll say next, what we'll do later, how we'll handle tomorrow's challenge. This future orientation means we're rarely fully here. 2. The judging mind. We're constantly evaluating. Is this person interesting? Do they like me? How am I coming across? Should I be somewhere else? This continuous judgment creates distance from the present moment. 3. Digital conditioning. We've trained our brains to expect constant novelty and stimulation. Simply being with another person without additional input feels understimulating. So we reach for our phones or let our minds wander. 4. Discomfort with depth. Real presence creates intimacy, and intimacy can be uncomfortable. It's easier to stay on the surface, keeping things light and superficial, than to drop into genuine connection. 5. The performance trap. When you're focused on managing impressions, you can't be fully present. You're too busy monitoring and adjusting your image to actually experience the moment. All of these obstacles are surmountable, but they require intentional practice. Practical exercise. The presence reset. Here's a technique you can use before any interaction to drop into full presence. Take 3 conscious breaths. Feel the air moving in and out. Feel your body in the chair or standing on the ground. Name 3 things you can see without judgment. I see a blue wall. I see a coffee cup. I see a plant. Name 3 things you can hear. Background noise, voices, silence, whatever's actually present. Set a single intention. I'm going to be fully present with this person. This 30-second practice shifts your nervous system from default mode, planning, judging, managing, to present mode, aware, receptive, available. Do this before every significant conversation this week. Notice what changes. The art of listening completely. True presence requires a specific kind of listening, not listening to respond, but listening to understand. Most people don't listen this way. They listen for the gap where they can insert their own story. Something they can agree or disagree with. Evidence of whether the person likes them. The point where they can offer advice. Real listening is different. It's generous. You're giving the gift of your complete attention without expecting anything in return. Curious. You're genuinely interested in understanding their experience, not evaluating whether it matches yours. Patient. You're comfortable with pauses, tangents, and the non-linear way humans actually communicate. Non-comparative. You're not comparing their experience to yours or preparing to share your version. Accepting. You're letting their experience be what it is without trying to fix, change, or minimize it. This kind of listening is transformative. People can feel the quality of it. They lean in, share more deeply, and often say things they didn't plan to say. The follow-up question technique. Here's a simple practice that will immediately improve your presence. After someone shares something, ask a follow-up question that goes deeper before sharing anything about yourself. They say, I had a frustrating day at work. Typical response. Oh man, I know what you mean. Yesterday I had this thing happen. Present response. That sounds tough. What was the most frustrating part about it? Then actually listen to the answer and ask another follow-up question if appropriate. This does two things. First, it demonstrates you're actually listening, not just waiting for your turn. Second, it invites them to go deeper, which creates more meaningful connection than parallel storytelling. Try this. In your next 3 conversations, ask 2 genuine follow-up questions before sharing anything about yourself. Watch what happens to the quality of the conversation. Being comfortable with silence. We've touched on this before, but it bears repeating in the context of presence. Full presence requires comfort with silence. When there's a gap in conversation, the unpresent person rushes to fill it with more words, different topics, anything to avoid the discomfort of empty space. The present person is comfortable with the gap. They know silence isn't empty. It's pregnant with possibility. It's space for reflection, for deeper truth to emerge, for genuine connection to happen. Practice sitting in silence with someone you trust. 5 minutes, no talking, just being together. It will feel impossibly awkward at first, but if you can develop comfort with shared silence, you've developed a superpower. People will feel profoundly peaceful and accepted around you because you're not demanding they perform or fill space. You're okay with simply being together. The single-tasking revolution. Here's a radical practice for our multitasking age. Do one thing at a time. When you're in conversation, be in conversation. Not in conversation while also checking email, scrolling social media, or thinking about your next meeting. When you're eating, be eating. Taste the food. Notice the textures. Not eating while watching TV and scrolling your phone. When you're walking, be walking. Feel your body moving. Notice your surroundings. Not walking while planning and problem solving and barely aware you have a body. This might sound like a productivity killer. Actually, it's the opposite. Single tasking improves both the quality of your work and the quality of your life. But more importantly for our purposes, it trains your capacity for presence. Every time you choose to do one thing fully instead of multiple things partially, you're building the presence muscle. And that muscle makes you magnetically attractive. Real-world application: the first date. Let me give you a concrete example of how presence transforms interaction. Jessica went on a first date with someone she'd met online. Her date was conventionally attractive and accomplished. But throughout the dinner, he checked his phone repeatedly, looked around the restaurant, and interrupted her stories to share his own. She left feeling unseen and uninterested in a second date, not because he was rude or inappropriate, but because he wasn't present. A week later, she went on a date with someone less conventionally attractive and less accomplished on paper. But from the moment they sat down, he was fully there. He put his phone away. He asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to the answers. He noticed when she was cold and suggested moving to a different table. He remembered details she'd mentioned earlier and referenced them later. She left feeling like she'd been seen for the first time in months. They've now been together for 2 years. The difference wasn't looks or achievement, it was presence. The presence, attraction, connection. Why is presence so attractive? Several reasons. It signals value. When you give someone your full attention, you're communicating. You matter, your words matter, this moment matters. This is profoundly validating. It creates safety. Presence requires dropping defenses and agendas. When someone is fully present with you, you can feel their openness, which makes it safe for you to be open too. It's rare. In a world of constant distraction, genuine presence stands out dramatically. It's memorable simply because it's unusual. It facilitates real connection. Surface-level interaction happens with divided attention. Depth requires presence. People crave depth even if they don't consciously realize it. It's contagious. When you're present, others become more present. Your nervous system state influences theirs through mirror neurons. Your presence invites their presence. The quality of your attention. Not all attention is created equal. There's perfunctory attention, going through the motions of eye contact and nods while your mind is elsewhere. There's anxious attention, watching for signs of approval or rejection. There's judgmental attention, evaluating and critiquing. And then there's what we might call loving attention, open, accepting, genuinely interested attention that holds space for the other person to be exactly who they are. This loving attention isn't about romantic love. It's about approaching others with basic human warmth and goodwill. It's the opposite of the suspicious, evaluative, self-protective attention that's become our cultural default. When you offer loving attention, people bloom in your presence. They become more themselves, more interesting, more genuine, more alive. Practical exercise. The presence practice. Here's your presence training for the next 2 weeks. Daily. Practice the 30-second presence reset before at least one interaction per day. In conversations, use the 2 follow-up questions before sharing about yourself technique. Weekly, have at least one conversation where you put your phone completely away, ideally in another room. Notice the difference. Experimental. Try 5 minutes of shared silence with someone you trust. Throughout the day, practice single tasking. When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. When you listen, just listen. Track what happens. You'll likely notice conversations become more meaningful. People seem to enjoy talking with you more. You remember interactions better. You feel more energized rather than drained by social interaction. People seek you out more. Presence is a practice, not a destination. You'll drift into distraction countless times. That's not failure, it's the practice. Each time you notice you've drifted and consciously return to presence, you're strengthening the muscle. In the next chapter, we'll bring everything together and explore how to integrate all these elements into a cohesive way of being that makes you naturally, effortlessly attractive. Chapter 10. Integration. Becoming magnetically you. We've covered a lot of ground: grounded presence, strategic silence, body language, vocal tonality, emotional intelligence, social energy, authenticity, and full presence. Each of these elements is powerful on its own, but their real magic emerges when they're integrated into a cohesive way of being. This final chapter is about integration, taking all these pieces and weaving them into the fabric of who you are, so that silent seduction becomes not something you do, but something you are. Beyond technique to embodiment. Here's the difference between technique and embodiment. Technique is something you apply consciously. You remember to pause before speaking. You intentionally slow down your gestures. You consciously maintain eye contact for the right duration. It works, but it requires effort and attention. Embodiment is when these behaviors become automatic. You naturally pause before speaking because you've internalized the value of reflection. Your gestures are naturally deliberate because you've released anxious energy. Your eye contact is naturally engaging because you're genuinely present. The journey from technique to embodiment takes time and consistent practice. You can't rush it, but you can trust the process. Every time you consciously practice one of these techniques, you're building new neural pathways. Eventually, the new way becomes the default way. The foundation, self-worth. Let's talk about what underlies all of this work, your relationship with yourself. If you fundamentally believe you're not enough, not interesting enough, attractive enough, successful enough, whatever enough, then no technique will make you genuinely magnetic. The neediness will leak through. The desperation for validation will show up in subtle ways. The performance will be exhausting. But if you have a foundational sense of self-worth, not arrogance or superiority, but a simple acceptance that you're inherently valuable as a human being, then everything changes. From this foundation of self-worth, you don't need others' approval, though you enjoy it when it comes. You can be rejected without being diminished. You can be authentic because you're not protecting a fragile ego. You can give energy freely because you're not operating from scarcity. You can be present because you're not anxiously managing impressions. So the real work, the deep work, is cultivating genuine self-worth, not through affirmations or positive thinking, but through self-compassion. Treating yourself with the kindness you'd offer a good friend. Self-knowledge. Understanding your values, needs, patterns, and triggers. Self-care. Meeting your own physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Self-trust. Keeping commitments to yourself and honoring your own boundaries. Self-acceptance. Embracing all parts of yourself, including the imperfect parts. This isn't selfish work. It's foundational work. You cannot sustainably give what you don't have. You cannot make others feel valued if you don't feel valuable yourself. The daily practice. Here's how you might structure a daily practice that integrates everything we've covered. Morning, 10 minutes. Grounding meditation, 3-point ground exercise. Intention setting. Today I will bring grounded presence to my interactions. Physical centering. Movement or stretching to inhabit your body fully. Throughout the day. Before each significant interaction, 30-second presence reset. During interactions, notice when you're performing versus being present, and gently return to presence. After key interactions, brief reflection. Did you give or take energy? Evening, 5 minutes. Review. What went well? Where did you get hooked into performance or reactivity? Appreciation. Acknowledge 3 moments of genuine connection or presence. Integration. What's one thing you learned about yourself today? This isn't adding more to your already full life. It's creating intentional pauses within your life to practice presence and integration. The integration map. Think of the elements we've covered as interconnected rather than separate. Grounded presence is the foundation everything else builds on. Without it, you're performing rather than being. Strategic silence flows naturally from grounded presence. When you're not anxious, you don't need to fill every gap. Body language reflects your internal state. Work on the inside, grounded presence, self-worth, and the outside, open body language, follows. Vocal quality is similarly connected to your nervous system. Calm yourself internally and your voice naturally becomes more resonant and attractive. Emotional intelligence requires the self-awareness that comes from presence and the self-regulation that comes from grounding. Energy elevation is only possible when your own reservoir is full, which requires self-care and boundaries. Authenticity emerges when you're not performing, which requires self-acceptance and security. Full presence ties it all together, being here, now, with yourself and others, without agenda or performance. See how it works? These aren't separate techniques to master. They're facets of a single way of being, present, grounded, authentic, emotionally intelligent, and energetically generous. Common challenges and how to navigate them. Let's address some common challenges you'll likely encounter. Challenge 1. I keep forgetting to practice. Solution: attach practices to existing habits. Do the grounding exercise while your coffee brews. Practice the presence reset while walking to meetings. Use transitions as reminders. Challenge 2. It feels fake when I'm doing it consciously. Solution: this is normal and temporary. All new behaviors feel artificial at first. Keep practicing. What's conscious and awkward now will become unconscious and natural later. The question isn't, does this feel natural? It's, is this aligned with who I want to be? Challenge 3. People are reacting differently and it's uncomfortable. Solution: when you change, others' responses change. Some will be drawn to the new you, others might be confused or even threatened. This is information, not a problem. You're sorting for people who resonate with your authentic self. Challenge 4. I'm doing everything right, but not seeing results. Solution: check your motivation. If you're doing these practices to get something, attention, validation, romance, you're still operating from neediness. The practices work when you do them for their own sake, to become more present, more grounded, more yourself. Results are a byproduct, not the goal. Challenge 5. I had a day where I was totally reactive and performed the whole time. Solution: this is not failure, this is being human. The practice isn't perfection, it's noticing when you've drifted and gently returning. Self-compassion for the drift, commitment to returning. That's the practice. The compound effect. Here's what most people don't realize about this work. The effects compound over time. In week 1, you might not notice much difference. Maybe your conversations are slightly better. Maybe you feel a little less anxious. By week 4, people start commenting that something's different about you, though they can't quite identify what. By week 12, your presence has noticeably changed. People seek you out. Conversations go deeper. You're less drained and more energized by social interaction. By 6 months, it's hard to remember what your old patterns even felt like. The new way has become your way. But this only happens with consistent practice. Not perfect practice, consistent practice. Small actions repeated daily create massive change over time. Creating your own integration plan. Here's your work to close out this chapter. 1. Identify your starting point. Of all the elements we've covered, which 1 to 2 need the most work? Start there. 2. Design your daily practice. What specific practices will you commit to? Be realistic. Better to do 10 minutes daily than to plan an hour and never do it. 3. Create accountability. Tell someone what you're working on, or journal about it, or set reminders. Make it harder to forget than to remember. 4. Set a review point. 30 days from now, assess. What's changed? What's working? What needs adjustment? 5. Celebrate progress. Notice and acknowledge the small wins. Each moment of genuine presence, each time you catch yourself performing and choose authenticity, each interaction where you elevated energy, these deserve recognition. The invitation. Everything in this book boils down to a single invitation: to stop performing and start being. Being present instead of being impressive. Being authentic instead of being perfect. Being grounded instead of being anxious. Being generous instead of being needy. Being here instead of being somewhere else. This is the essence of silent seduction. Not techniques to manipulate attraction, but practices to remove the barriers to your natural magnetism. You already have everything you need to be magnetically attractive. You just need to stop doing the things that hide it: the performance, the anxiety, the need for approval, the constant mental absence. The world is full of people performing. Be the person who's simply, fully present. That alone will make you unforgettable. Your next 30 days. Here's my challenge to you for the next month. Week 1. Foundation. Practice grounding daily. Focus on strategic silence. Notice your body language patterns. Week 2. Connection. Work on vocal quality. Practice emotional intelligence. Focus on genuine curiosity in conversations. Week 3. Energy. Become aware of energy giving versus taking. Practice authenticity. Set one new boundary. Week 4. Integration. Practice full presence in all interactions. Review and refine your daily practice. Notice what's changed. At the end of 30 days, you won't be finished. This is lifelong work, but you will have built momentum, seen results, and most importantly, experienced what it feels like to show up differently in the world. And once you've tasted that, the freedom of not performing, the energy of genuine presence, the depth of authentic connection, you won't want to go back. In the conclusion, we'll tie everything together and talk about what living as your magnetically attractive self actually looks like in practice. Conclusion: living the magnetic life. We began this journey with a simple observation. The most attractive people aren't more beautiful, richer, or even more confident than you. They simply know something you don't. Now you know what they know. You understand that attraction isn't about addition, adding techniques, tactics, or performances to your social repertoire. It's about subtraction. Removing the masks, the anxiety, the neediness, the performance that obscure your natural magnetism. you've learned that grounded presence is the foundation of everything. When you're rooted in your body, connected to the present moment, and operating from a place of internal stability, you naturally become magnetic. Strategic silence is more powerful than clever words. The ability to be comfortable with quiet, to pause before speaking, and to create space for depth makes you stand out in a world of verbal noise. Body language communicates more than words ever could. Open posture, soft eye contact, deliberate movements, and relaxed presence speak volumes about your internal state. Vocal quality can be trained and refined. A resonant, measured voice commands attention and communicates confidence in ways that transcend the actual words spoken. Emotional intelligence, understanding and managing your emotions and reading the emotions of others, creates the psychological safety that allows genuine attraction to flourish. Energy elevation makes you someone people want to be around. When you give energy rather than take it, when you fill your own reservoir and share from fullness, you become a magnet. Authenticity isn't oversharing or refusing to adapt. It's alignment between your internal experience and external expression, appropriately calibrated to context. Full presence is the rarest and most valuable gift you can give. In a world of divided attention, being fully here, fully now, fully engaged makes you unforgettable. But knowledge isn't transformation. Understanding these principles intellectually is just the beginning. The real work and the real reward comes from embodying them through consistent practice. The before and after. Think about who you were when you started this audiobook. Maybe you were someone who felt anxious in social situations, constantly wondering if people liked you, filled every silence with nervous chatter, performed a version of yourself rather than being yourself, left interactions feeling drained rather than energized, struggled to make meaningful connections, felt overlooked or forgettable despite your best efforts. Now imagine the person you're becoming, someone who enters rooms with quiet confidence, grounded in their own worth, is comfortable with silence, knowing it creates space for real connection, shows up authentically without masks or performance, elevates the energy of every space they enter, connects deeply and meaningfully with others, is naturally magnetic simply by being fully present. That transformation is available to you, not someday, not when you're finally good enough, right now, today, in your very next interaction. The practice, not the destination. Here's something important to understand. You'll never arrive. You'll never reach a point where you've mastered silent seduction and can coast on autopilot. This is a practice, not a destination. Some days you'll be grounded and present. Other days you'll be anxious and reactive. Some interactions will feel effortless. Others will feel like you're starting from scratch. That's not just okay, it's the actual practice. The practice isn't perfection. It's noticing when you've drifted from presence and consciously returning again and again for the rest of your life. Think of it like physical fitness. You don't work out for 6 months, get in shape, and then never exercise again. You work out consistently because you value the state of being fit more than you mind the effort required. Same with this work. You don't practice presence until you get it and then stop. You practice presence because you value being present more than you mind the effort required to remember and return. What changes, what doesn't? As you embody these practices, here's what will change. How you feel in your own skin. How comfortable you are with silence and space. The quality of your attention and presence. Your relationships, some will deepen, others will naturally fade. The opportunities that come to you. How people respond to you. Your energy levels after social interaction. Your internal sense of peace and alignment. Here's what won't change. Not everyone will like you, nor should they. You'll still have awkward moments. You'll still sometimes say the wrong thing. You'll still experience rejection and disappointment. You'll still have days when you're reactive rather than responsive. The difference is how you relate to these inevitable human experiences. Instead of seeing them as evidence of your inadequacy, you see them as part of being human. Instead of spiraling into self-criticism, you extend your self-compassion and recommit to the practice. The ripple effect. Here's what might surprise you. The benefits of this work extend far beyond becoming more attractive or having better social interactions. When you practice presence, your work improves. You're more creative, more productive, more effective. When you practice emotional intelligence, your relationships transform at every level. Romantic, familial, professional. When you develop genuine self-worth, your entire life trajectory shifts. You start making choices based on what you actually want, rather than what you think will make others approve of you. You set boundaries that protect your energy. You attract people and opportunities aligned with who you actually are, rather than who you're pretending to be. This is the ripple effect. You begin this work to become more attractive. You continue it because it makes your entire life better. The permission to be human. Let me say this clearly. You don't need to be perfect to be attractive. In fact, the pursuit of perfection is precisely what makes you less attractive. Your imperfections, your quirks, your struggles, your uncertainties, these aren't flaws to be hidden. They're part of your humanity. And humanity is what people connect with. The most magnetic people I know are deeply flawed. They make mistakes. They have bad days. They struggle with insecurities. But they're not trying to hide these realities. They're comfortable being human. So, give yourself permission to have days when you're not at your best. Make social mistakes and learn from them. Be confused or uncertain sometimes. Not always. Say the right thing. Be imperfect while still being worthy. This permission to be human is itself attractive. It creates space for others to be human too. Your commitment. As we close, I want to invite you to make a commitment to yourself. Not a rigid all-or-nothing commitment that sets you up for failure, but a gentle, sustainable commitment to practice. I commit to practicing presence in my daily interactions, noticing when I'm performing and choosing authenticity, managing my own energy so I can give freely to others, being kind to myself when I drift from the practice, returning to the foundational practices, grounding, breath, presence, whenever I feel lost. Trusting that small, consistent actions create massive change over time. Write this down. Return to it regularly. Let it guide you back to the practice whenever you've drifted. The final truth. Here's the final truth I want you to carry with you. You are already enough. You always have been. Nothing you've learned in this audiobook has added to your fundamental worth as a human being. All of this work, the grounding, the silence, the presence, the authenticity, doesn't make you more valuable. It simply removes the barriers that prevented you from recognizing and expressing the value that was always there. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. It needs you to be real. It needs you to show up as the full, flawed, fascinating human being you actually are. When you do that, when you drop the masks, stop performing, and simply exist in grounded, authentic presence, you become magnetically attractive. Not because you've mastered some sophisticated social technique, but because genuine human presence is the rarest and most precious thing in our distracted, performance-oriented world. The people who are meant for you, friends, partners, opportunities, experiences, will find you when you stop hiding. And the people who aren't meant for you will naturally move on. Both outcomes are perfect. Your next step: close this audiobook and go be present with someone. Don't try to be impressive. Don't perform. Just be fully here, fully now, with another human being. Notice what happens when you bring grounded presence instead of anxious performance, when you offer silence instead of filling every gap, when you show up authentically instead of strategically. That single interaction, done consciously, is worth more than all the knowledge in this audiobook. And then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Small actions, repeated consistently, will transform not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. This is the practice of silent seduction. This is the path to becoming magnetically you. Welcome to the journey. I can't wait to see where it takes you. A final note. Thank you for investing your time and attention in this audiobook. The fact that you've listened all the way through tells me something important about you. You're committed to growth. You're willing to do the work. You recognize that becoming more attractive isn't about superficial tricks. It's about deep transformation. Honor that commitment. Practice these principles. Be patient with yourself. And remember, the most attractive thing about you isn't anything you do. It's the quality of presence you bring to simply being yourself. The world is waiting for the real you. Stop performing and start being. That's the secret of silent seduction. That's the secret of living a magnetic life. Now go live it.